Hello all, James here. One of the biggest pieces of wrestling news, and WWE especially, in the past couple of months, if nothing else, is TKO's forced reduction of wrestlers' salaries in line with their beliefs of their future expectations and potential growth going forward. And these are all people who'd seemingly re-signed recently for big money. This is some half dozen or so wrestlers in all with tenure, all with high-priced contracts, but weren't getting best used at the time. Once again, because of the WWE creative, they weren't getting used, not because they were injured. Now, they were all approached to take a 50% pay cut or be fired. Sheamus was one of them who WWE approached, and he told WWE to stick it up their pooper, I'm sure, or words to their effect. The New Day, Kofi Kingston and Xavier were approached with the same ultimatum: either lose half your income or you're out the door. They said no as well, and they were released, with their debut in AEW being expected any week now. But there were other nameless WWE wrestlers who allegedly took this deal, but their names, for obvious reasons, were not released. That was until the latest episode of Kevin Nash's podcast dropped, and Nash's co-host Sean Oliver simply threw a name out there like it was public knowledge: Sami Zayn. Now, at this point, I would like to say I was really in two minds about doing this video completely. I don't want to push anybody's personal business out there, but it's all over Reddit, it's all over Twitter, and quite a few wrestling news websites have covered this at this point, so I guess, at least, if nothing else, I won't be the first to mention it. First off, Kevin Nash, and also I cover the news, is what I do. Kevin Nash takes a minute to congratulate Sami Zayn for winning the WWE title in the podcast clip. He talked about not knowing how it truly feels to hold that belt until you get that WWE title in your hands. It's a nice tribute to Sami, all in all. And then Sean pipes up with the following. Sorry, I think gravity is hitting a little heavier in the Kevin Nash household than it is on the rest of planet Earth. I don't know why he's always falling over half the time. Like his head's like an anvil. Anyway, here's what he says.
The last time Sami Zayn was significantly in the wrestling news was in regards to the pay reductions, right? I don't know why his name landed more significantly than others, but his was one that was publicly reported, and a significant reduction of a nice salary. Am I wrong to connect any dots? Because they kind of made him when I say they, I mean the wrestling media, not WWE.
Well, I don't.
Firstly, James, your fearless leader of the WSI network, cover wrestling news for a living. That is my job. I don't catch all the stories, of course, but no one person could without trolling every single news site and every single social media account, major one anyway, on every single social media platform 24 hours a day. But I covered the WWE releases at length, and when they happened from April all the way to the present day, when Sheamus got released a few days ago, essentially forced into quitting. Basically, he was fired, but it was all semantics anyway. I never, at any point, heard the name Sami Zayn getting thrown out there as one of the people who took a pay cut to stay with the company. Ever. Not at any point. I didn't even see Sami Zayn's name come up as a guess, because he was being used on television every week, unlike Sheamus and the New Day, who were barely being used. Now, I've checked through archives of all major wrestling news websites of the past few months, even the minor news websites, and his name was never reported. Not once, not even hinted at. The closest we get to anybody is Mike Johnson saying at least one major name, quote, had agreed to that deal. No, not specifically Sami, not specifically anyone. That's it. So no, to the absolute best of my knowledge, Sami Zayn was not one of the names brought up or heavily hinted at in anything I read or researched. And I have been given other names, but I won't report on them because I absolutely cannot confirm them. Secondly, Sean is speaking about connecting the dots. I've seen some people online say, well, he's just saying he's connecting the dots. He's trying to guess if he's one of the people with the pay cuts. No, listen to it in context once again. He's not saying that, as best as I can tell. He is saying he's trying to connect the dots with Sami Zayn taking a 50% pay reduction to him winning the WWE title. That is what I think he's saying there. Then Kevin Nash then immediately starts doing what I read as on-the-fly backtracking, calling an audible, would you say, to immediately distance himself from Shawn's comments.
I don't know that he was reduced.
Is he reading off the ceiling?
So, I mean, I can't connect any dots because I don't have...
Keep in mind that Kevin Nash is a professional actor, but I'll be honest, I wasn't convinced by that performance. But then Shawn kind of recoils in horror, it seems, at the idea that they've actually not spoken about this on the podcast before.
We didn't cover that here?
It was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
Yes, indeed, he had fucked up. Then there's some mumbling and stumbling and claims it was reported. When again, I do not believe it was reported anywhere.
I'd heard.
Right.
I mean, I'd heard.
In fairness, I'd heard 2009 wants their shirt back. Affliction, crikey.
Heard that he was.
It was reported. Let's say that.
Yeah, it was reported, but that. Unless I see a contract where it's.
That's so the best part of the video as well, where they just kind of just stop talking, and then it looks like Nash's battery dies, and he shuts down, and he's required to be sent back to the lab for retuning, while Shawn Oliver is thinking the best way to chat his way out of this one. Here's one massive question for you guys. Has anyone over at Kliq This ever heard of fucking editing? Just edit that shit out. I mean, better yet, don't even... And here's the thing. I think that's from a clip, not the full episode. So not only did they not edit it out the full episode, they actually made a clip and then left that in just to make sure if whoever missed it if they watched the full episode, that hey, there's a clip here, it might reach more people. Anyway, here is pretty much everybody's opinion of this interaction. Shawn and Kevin had an off-screen chat about who was rumoured to have taken pay cuts in WWE. That's pretty much fair enough, I think, to say. Now, potentially enabled by some insider information or belief, I guess, that Nash had conjured up from his sources. Maybe this is all speculation on my part, from within the company. Maybe they just talked about it ad nauseum and thought he's definitely one of the ones. But it kind of sounds like, with the certainty that Shawn was talking about Sami Zayn's name at the beginning, it feels like that he's got information from some source somewhere. That is just how I am reading it. I cannot stress enough pure speculation of how I'm reading that situation. But also Kevin Nash, maybe he's got sources in WWE, still got tentacles inside there. I'm sure he's still good friends with Triple H and, of course, his wife, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. But he's also said that, he doesn't speak to Triple H that much, so I can't imagine maybe that wouldn't have come up in conversation. I don't know. Who else does he know in the company who would, one, be privy to that information and two, give it him? I don't know. Anyway, maybe he's hearing rumours floating around from maybe within the business that I'm not hearing, so I've not heard it. I've heard other names, not Sami Zayn's. So it's interesting. But what strikes me about this interaction is that it seems that Shawn truly believed that Sami Zayn had been the name that had been reported and that they talked about it on air before, neither of which is true. And here's something else. If it is indeed true that Sami took a pay reduction despite being heavily featured on WWE television, why was he then made WWE champion, albeit briefly, as a reward? That's what I'm pretty sure Shawn is trying to connect the dots, quote, about. Something is telling me that Sami's name was still just heavily rumoured and not actually confirmed, even with Kevin Nash, even if someone in the company thought that might be the case, and he sort of threw that out there at some point offline and was never meant to be on the show. But my gut feeling on this is that Sami Zayn... I've never had a problem with Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn maybe wasn't one of those names. How would Nash know, once again, is one thing, but who does he talk to that would be privy to that information, etc.? I know that Nash clearly told Shawn Oliver about it, apparently, but that being said, I'm not fully convinced that Sami Zayn actually was one of those names, because the roster members that we know were given the pay cut ultimatum were people that were pretty much being paid to sit at home and do nothing, and Sami doesn't really fit into that description, although with the initial reporting back in May or whatever it is, or late April, is that at least one major name had taken a pay cut, so it's not a complete one-size-fits-all in that sense. The only thing I will sympathise with Shawn here over, and trust me, it's going to be very little, is that I also have a terrible time keeping track of what I have said on previous podcasts and shows, because I basically record stuff and then forget about it and move on to the next one. However, he probably produces 2 hours of content. I produce more like 8 to 9 hours a week as well. So I think most people will afford me some grace on that one, if nothing else. So yes, they may well have thrown out Sami Zayn's business for no good reason, and then nobody told the editor, presuming they have one, to remove that chat entirely, like I would have done. Trust me, the shoe's on the other foot, and we say stuff on podcasts all the time that we cut. We're pretty on the ball with that, and for good reason. But then the whole, and trust me, it's the funniest or most amusing stuff or most interesting stuff sometimes it has to go, but there it is. But then the whole cutting, reducing a pay of WWE talent combined with Kevin Nash's views of talking about cutting, reducing pay of WWE talent kind of gets even richer in the whole scope of this, with Kevin Nash one half of it. Because Nash recently said that he wishes WWE talents were getting a bigger piece of the financial pie. If you don't know, WWE pays their talent something like in the low teens, maybe 13-14% of their total income for the year. Only that percentage goes to the talent. UFC is almost as bad, but other sports pay talent nearer 50% of their total earnings as a comparison. So people, in that sense, people are really getting screwed over. Which is why we're going to be talking very briefly about union. But when initially discussing all these releases some time ago, Nash advocated for a union in wrestling and even reached out to the Screen Actors Guild president, or whatever the head honcho guy was, about the possibility of sorting out insurance, starting a union, whatever it might be, for the guys and girls who put their bodies on the line. Now, the head of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, of course, showed considerable interest. But then, in the words of Nash himself, quote, "I sent a message to Andrew Yang and he got back to me. But I didn't get back to him, because it was just like, what benefit does this do to me? I'm done wrestling." The altruistic Big Daddy Cool there. Essentially, my thoughts are that Kevin Nash apparently had a public change of heart. And this, once again, just guessing, but it just seems a bit fishy to me that after a few weeks of publicly advocating for a union, or this needs to change in the business, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden someone in WWE may have politely reminded him that he was still under a WWE Legends deal. They do not appreciate that kind of rhetoric from a podcast of someone who's basically hired by the company, and that New World Order merchandise can be pulled off those shelves and the residuals going along with it very, very quickly. But now, that's purely a theory on my part. But Nash then goes on to say that WWE wrestlers on the main roster don't need a union because they are all making great money, which is, yes, they are making great money, but then a few weeks earlier he was saying they won't get paid enough, so, you know. But Nash then also says the wrestlers back in the 90s needed a union way more. Considering that Nash was one of the most powerful men in the industry from the mid-90s to the early 2000s, I've never ever heard, once again, I've never seen it reported, to my knowledge publicly or any private conversations being made public after the fact, that Kevin Nash ever brought up union once in WCW or the WWE. Certainly didn't make a play for it, I guess, or any rumblings being made of it, even though he and Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan were making... Look, they're all aligned, and Hogan, we all know how much he values a union from the mid-80s, according to Jesse Ventura, but then, hey, it didn't benefit the big stars, of which those three were them, and getting paid way too much money, so it doesn't concern them now, because, hey, it doesn't concern him then, doesn't concern him now, I guess, because, quote, what benefit does that do to me? I'm done wrestling. So, that's pretty much the video. Also, Chris insisted on improving the audio quality in the clip, so you're very welcome. That's the video. See you for another soon.